The real value of that Vegas pick isn't necessarily who the Calgary Flames will draft. It's what they might be able to churn that pick into in the NHL trade market.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On Flames. I am Ryan G. Coming up, we will go through the Dredge Ahead, the segment usually reserved for Thursdays, but we're doing Thursday's show on a Saturday. That's going to be 5 teams related to the Calgary Flames' current moment in time. A lot of that is going to be around the NHL Draft in June. We shared on Friday's show some of the Flames players that have been listed as untouchable, but should anyone on this team actually be untouchable? Let's start, though, with this VGK pick. You have the Vegas Golden Knights now in the Final Four. We know that Calgary will not have a pick out of that trade that's any higher than number 28 because this year there's only 31 first-round picks. So Vegas, Colorado, and then the 2 teams remaining in the Eastern Conference will have those Final Four picks, 28 through 31. And you could call it a prospect jackpot, perhaps. There's an opportunity there to make a selection down in the bottom Final 4 picks of the draft. And Calgary, to be fair to this Craig Conroy regime, they found a lot of gold there. 28th overall in 2024 was Matvei Gridin, and he seems to be the best thing going right now offensively for the Calgary Flames. The reality, though, is this is a trade bait pick. It's something to use in a package to make yourselves go a direction that gets you in a position to go get the player that you actually want. Calgary is at the mercy of the teams atop the draft on who they're going to be able to select number 6. And we explored earlier this week the idea of packaging as much of the draft capital that Calgary has accumulated to go up to number 2 and get Ivar Stenberg. Don't wait to see if Stenberg falls to 3. Identify the player that you think you can get. Toronto seems far less likely to part ways with the number 1 overall pick. I've been in consult with the likes of John Easthope from the Red Mile Rundown. We've had comments on the show about how unlikely it is to see a lot of trades in the top 5 of the NHL draft. Historically, that is not the case. So Calgary would have to burn a significant amount of that if they were to make one of the most unexpected moves, perhaps. But Calgary is not the only team that's exploring this idea of trying to get up to San Jose, because the Sharks in so many ways seemed underwhelmed when they were announced to have the number 2 pick. And the Sharks also maybe don't have as many pressing needs to try to find a way to get Ivar Stenberg in the mix. So if that's the case, maybe that pick is available to be had. But that value of the late first round pick that Calgary could use, maybe it's something that you could trade and find a way to get a center that you truly want to have. If the reality is that you cannot get up to Stenberg, or you cannot move any higher to get a player that you truly, truly want, then you have so much less control right now atop the draft. So you settle for who's available at number 6. Craig Conroy in his post-draft lottery press conference interview seemed to be resigned to that case. So this is where you can have some control. Calgary's picking a lot at the very bottom of that draft, and they have a lot of draft capital available to them in the second round. Rangers pick, Flames existing pick, the Mammoth pick, Ottawa's pick. That all came through because of the way that they dealt MacKenzie Weegar to the Utah Mammoth. Right now, I think that's been one of those true win-wins for both sides. I think Weegar was a big reason the Mammoth closed out a playoff position. But Calgary's doing fine with Olli Maatta. They're excited about Jonathan Castagna, and then these 3 extra picks in the second round that just helps you possibly get back up somewhere you want to be in the opening round. So that pick really values itself more to find the player that you want to get through that section of the draft that is ideally, still valuable assets, just not some game changer that you might find in the top 2. The other idea would be to use as much of that draft capital to really take the biggest swing possibly in modern NHL draft history. I think that could be the case. I mean, the reality is, are there any real undervalued prospects where Calgary would be picking at 28 if you were to try to move up to the top 12, the top 15. These are kind of things that you don't typically see, but Calgary has a level of draft capital that seems to have been amassed in a way that's not normally the case. So that Vegas pick still feels, especially now that the Golden Knights have progressed farther in the NHL playoffs, more valuable as trade bait than maybe a late first round selection, especially when you combine it with this menu of picks that the Flames have. They're really sitting on a gold mine, or funnily enough, a goal mine, perhaps, that needs to kind of be redeemed. And the other idea too is this internal core that Calgary already has, players that have already put in some NHL time, the Matt Coronatos or the Connor Zaries. Are they enough to save the Flames even as they continue to be developed? How much more ceiling is there for Coronato and Zary to be able to reach, right? It feels like the only storyline that came out of the tail end of the season was Connor Zary's post-season exit interview comments that just kind of felt a little off kilter. But by and large, it seems like most of the core of this current Calgary Flames roster is pretty happy with where things are going with the team. But can the pipeline that they already have built be enough to really change the trajectory of this team? Does it go faster if they're able to use the draft capital that they've amassed more specifically, more intentionally, to get quality added into the mix? And if you had the option to pick at 28, I'm going to give you three. You can pick at 28, just kind of stay put. You could package the 28th and a lot of that second round draft capital. Maybe even there's a lot of value in Vancouver's third round pick, and you move up 10 spots. That's your second option. Would you be okay picking at number 18? Or if you were to get rid of, let's say you have the 18 picks in the first 3 rounds of the next 3 NHL drafts, if you were to get rid of, I'm going to go extreme, 9 of those, you get rid of half of those first 3 rounds of the next 3 draft picks to move up and get Ivar Stenberg. Would you be happier with that outcome? How boom or bust do you want to be with Calgary, considering where their pipeline is? So how confident do you feel like the pipeline that currently exists is going to mature the way that you want it to? Is Abram Weeb, Jonathan Ksania, some of these players that have already signed their entry-level contracts, are they going to be on the Flames roster a couple of seasons from now, making waves the way that maybe Matvei Gridin and Zayne Parekh are starting to appear like they're able to? And that's where I think I'm going the extreme. I'm getting rid of the farm to go up and get the number 1 international rated player in this year's draft. Take a bold swing and consider the fact that you've had such luck and there's still a lot of optimism. We talked a lot about the all-star caliber players that have emerged for Calgary in their pipeline, and especially those who are playing on NCAA rosters. Cole Reshney should probably be what you expect Cole to be. Colin Potter should probably be expected what your Colin Potter is supposed to be. And maybe even down the road, Samuel Honzek is able to stay healthy and be the player that you thought he would be. What are your thoughts? Let us know in the YouTube comments of those 3 scenarios I threw out. Which one do you feel most comfortable with in terms of flexing those draft capital muscles and making that Vegas Golden Knights pick at number 28 even more valuable in the trade market? On Friday's show, we shared the daily face-off report that some Flames are untouchable, but I wonder, should that be the case? That's next on Locked On Flames. If you have a sweet tooth like I do, you know how tough it is to find that perfect treat without all the sugar. And that is why cotton candy 5-hour energy shot has that nostalgic flavor that brings it back in a whole new way. This is that classic cotton candy flavor that you remember, but with a tasty caffeine boost and 0 sugar. It's quick and an easy way to satisfy the craving while keeping things simple and on the go. I always loved cotton candy. At the carnival, that was my biggest thing I'd be excited about at the fair, but I cannot be eating sweets all day, and I definitely have a sweet tooth. So when you look at alternatives, this is the one to go to because it's super convenient as well. It's a small portable shot. It's available on the go. It can just be that go-to thing that you have available when you want something sweet without all the sugar. So bring on the sweetness with 5-Hour Energy cotton candy shots, available online now at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon. The NBA playoffs are here and every possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets. Your first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. FanDuel is the best this time of year because everything is right there in one place. You can check stats, there's trends, everything you need to make your picks, and that makes the whole experience so much more exciting, and you feel super informed. You could be going after player props. Maybe you're just following your favorite stars. It adds another level of excitement in every single game. And right now, you're looking at plus 2,700 for the Detroit Pistons, maybe plus 6,000 if you believe in the Cleveland Cavaliers. And with the Western Conference Finals set, is it San Antonio at plus 310 or the Thunder to get back to the NBA Finals at minus 170? Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Calgary Flames reportedly have some players on their team that are deemed untouchable, but should that be the case? We'll explore that on this episode of Locked On Flames. Invite you first to join our Everydayer Club. We built it just for you. It's at lockedonflames.supercast.com. $5 a month, and you're in there with an ad-free version of our show on your favorite podcast app, so you don't have to relocate where you listen to us. You just get a new feed, and it saves you time because we're going to have you listen to our show ad-free. Also, Everydayer Club Discord server is yours to debate everything with our Locked On Podcast Network hosts and fellow fans. Go to lockedonflames.supercast.com or click on the link in the show notes to learn more. We mentioned that there was the daily face-off report that has Dustin Wolf, Matt Coronato, Matvei Gridin, and Zayne Parekh as untouchable pieces when it comes to being aggressive in the trade market for the Calgary Flames. I'm curious if you think that that should be the case. Dustin Wolf makes a ton of sense to me. So we're going to isolate the goalie situation just because when you re-sign Dustin Wolf to a 7-year contract, you give him that extension, you're basically putting a big flaming C flag in the stands, or in the ground rather, to say, hey, this is who's going to lead us into Scotia Place. We feel very comfortable where we're at in net. So then you turn to the other three. Matvei Gridin, it would feel really odd to say we're going to package Matvei Gridin in a deal to get Ivar Stenberg. Maybe if for some reason you could convince the Toronto Maple Leafs that he's somebody that you want to have now rather than getting Gavin McKenna. But I could see a scenario where you go, listen, we drafted Matvei Gridin at number 28. And as good as he's developed, he's still, at the time, was a 28th rated draft pick. And at the time, many claimed that that was a reach for the Calgary Flames to pick Matvei Gridin where they did. But I could also see on this list of top 10 prospects, are there some on that list that are slated to be even better than Matvei Gridin? And if Matvei is a product of his development at the AHL level, then wouldn't the prospect that was supposed to be better than him be even better through the development that Calgary can do? There's an argument to be made there. It's really, really risky because in so many of these instances, you kind of know what you have. Even the way that he's made remarks like, I want to be the leading scorer next year, that's huge. You have somebody who's playing with confidence and thinks he can get Calgary ultimately where they need to be. Matt Coronato, that feels like a slightly different story. Is the idea of trading Matt Coronato saying, listen, if we let Coronato go, and he ultimately becomes the 30-goal scorer that many of us think he can be, are we still doing the rebuild more justice by saying, okay, here's somebody we invested in at number 13 overall, and so far has produced 45 goals over 192 games. At some point, maybe he's producing 40 goals in a season, and if that's the case, we wish him well. But right now, we're investing in all of the youngest versions of our stars. So why not go out and say, if Matt Coronato is valuable to you and we can move up, San Jose, would San Jose like to have Matt Coronato, somebody who can start playing for them right now with nearly 200 NHL games under his belt? Maybe he's even better playing on a line with a Macklin Celebrini or something along those lines. JD Young, you can explain that a little bit better on Locked On Sharks. But if that's the seals the deal to get you Ivar Stenberg, and now you're running with this group, Stenberg, Gridin, Zayne Parekh over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, that seems like a pretty decent proposition. I think I would be okay with that. Maybe you're trading Zayne Parekh because you're going up and getting somebody who was even better than the number 9 overall pick a couple years ago. I could see Zayne Parekh being a bona fide untouchable just because all of the upside is still what's kind of making Zayne Parekh the most exciting. But the question is worth throwing out there. Is it better to bet on unknown upside or current young assets? For me, I think the excitement around Matvei Gridin, Zayne Parekh, and Dustin Wolf and the trajectory that you're designing this rebuild to be on, that makes a lot more sense to deem them as untouchable. But I'd kind of be curious if Matt Coronato could be dealt and that helps you get the best international skater in this entire prospect pool. Is that better than just kind of staying pat and picking up Keaton Verhoff? I could see that being a plausible situation. And of the 4 that were on that list as untouchable, that one was the one that surprised me the most. I still very much believe in Matt Coronato. I'm just at the point now where I'm kind of whelmed with his performance as opposed to underwhelmed by his performance. I still think there's nights I watch Matt Coronato and I get really excited about both how he's playing and what could be. And then you could also see, is Calgary got any bona fide reason to kind of shift to attacking the offensive side of the puck when it comes to acquiring assets? And in Ryan Huska's system, as I've been learning and understanding that, this is a very defensive minded system and there's not a lot of run and gun behind it, is having defenders who have an offensive mind kind of leading into how this system plays out. And if that's the case, maybe there's value in getting the best scoring, defenseman that's available in the draft. And that's still kind of shifting Calgary to an all offensive mindset. But I think the fact that the goalie situation seems to be as set as one can predict it can be, then there's not really as much of a trade market that Calgary would want to play in when it comes to moving Dustin Wolf, certainly, and maybe even Devin Cooley. I don't like the idea of that. I think Calgary has a reason to stay put, especially next year. Only like little loose hole to poke in that theory is if Devin Cooley and Dustin Wolf were too good at times, that Calgary didn't have the best chance at the highest pick that they could possibly get because of them. So a couple of interesting lines of thinking, but based on that list of untouchables, I definitely think Matt Coronato could be someone that you would move off that list. What are your thoughts? I'm going to kind of isolate it to Matt Coronato. If I told you Matt Coronato is not, in fact, untouchable, would you disagree? Let me know in the YouTube comments, because I think that of the 4 players on that list could be the one I question the most. We do the dredge ahead on Thursday's show, but since we had a little travel mishap trying to get back home, I'm doing the show on Saturday. So we're going to look at 5 teams in a situation related to the Calgary Flames in this exact moment of time. Florida, Chicago, San Jose, the Vegas Golden Knights, interestingly enough, with that pick that they owe the Calgary Flames, and Winnipeg might be aggressive in the NHL draft as well. We'll hear from their Locked On podcast hosts next on Locked On Flames. ED is way more common than you think. Millions of guys deal with it at some point, and that's exactly why HIMS offers a straightforward way to handle it. HIMS connects you with licensed healthcare professionals, giving you access to legitimate ED treatment options from the comfort of your own home. No awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines, just a straightforward process that makes it easy to get the care that you need. And the whole process is simple. You take a quick online intake and a provider reviews your information. And they also offer options like sildenafil, the generic for Viagra, at a fraction of the cost, plus other treatments so you can find what works best for you. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/lockedonnhl. That's hims.com/lockedonnhl for your free online visit. hims.com/lockedonnhl. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is a generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of Viatris Specialty LLC. Hims is not affiliated with or endorsed by Viatris. The dredge ahead, we hear from teams related to this moment in time for the Calgary Flames during the regular season. It's about the next 5 games on the schedule. Right now, it's about teams that are in similar situations to Calgary picking in the NHL draft lottery coming, or draft NHL entry draft coming up at the end of June after the lottery. And we're going to start the Florida Panthers because you look at where they sit and the options that they're going to have available to them at number 9, including, I think, Vigo, who keeps getting a mention in our YouTube comments. I want to get to Locked On Panthers talking about the positions that they might be looking at their pick.
I think where the Panthers sit, it's a pretty comfortable position because I feel like they're in a spot where if they trade that pick, it's not going to be really, it's not going to be frowned upon as far as the Panthers passed up on a potentially franchise-altering talent there that was a surefire star player, and they gave that away. I don't think the Panthers are in that range where they're picking. So you're in a position where if you trade that pick, you could definitely get someone to overpay because they'll see that the target they want in the draft is still available after the smoke of that top 6 picks, top 6 to 7 draft picks clears, and they're ultimately going to be like, oh my God, we have to take a swing at this, make a move now.
Locked On Blackhawks also kind of excited about the possibility that maybe wasn't there a couple months ago. Ivar Stenberg could be available when they selected number 4.
But I still think, in my opinion, at least, undoubtedly, Ivar Stenberg is the number 2 forward prospect in this year's draft class. And I am a little bit wary about getting my hopes up that Stenberg is still going to be available at number 4. However, what we're hearing from some of these top analysts and writers in the draft, business, and by the way, I'll be going a little bit deeper into all of these mock drafts like I do every year on the show. But I here today wanted to go through the top 4 that most of those analysts and writers have released before diving into their entire first round mock drafts. Because from what they're projecting, seems like there's a better chance than we initially expected that the Blackhawks still could come away with Stenberg at number 4 than when the lottery results happened and it felt like the world was crashing down and we had for sure missed out on both McKenna and Stenberg.
Yeah, I imagine that does feel pretty good, Chicago. It doesn't feel great over here in Calgary land. But yeah, maybe Stenberg is someone that you can get up to number 3 or number 4 and still have a chance at. But it seems like if Vancouver or Chicago could pick Stenberg, they likely would take that risk. We're doing the dredge ahead. 5 teams that are in a similar situation in this moment in time as the Calgary Flames. And San Jose is the team that Calgary sees at number 2 that they might be able to make a deal. And they're also talking about why Stenberg is such a coveted pick. This is Locked On Sharks.
A lot of things. Part of it is that he's had so much success at a professional level. The fact that the production has been where it has been for Frölunda, the fact that he was able to jump into the playoffs last season and be an impactful player at a young age and then continue to be an impactful player at this age and maybe even could have been utilized more by Frölunda over the course of the season. They had a so-so season, but what's interesting with Ivar too is obviously it's a draft where there's 2. We're talking about 2 wingers potentially at the top of this draft with him and Yavin McKenna. It's not pretty frequent that you're gonna make that leap for those players, but Stenberg, he's probably like the last central scouting measurement was 5'11". So he's sub 6 foot wings, basically same as McKenna, also a sub 6 foot wing. So, or maybe a little bit closer to 6, but yeah, I think that there's just a lot to like. He's a dynamic player. I think that's probably the thing that gets you excited. He's exciting.
Yeah, it's an exciting proposition to have him on your team. Things in Vegas, though, up. They're in the Western Conference Final, but down because some penalty has been issued, a penalty to the Vegas Golden Knights. Here's more Locked On Golden Knights.
The NHL announced today that as a result of flagrant violations of the 2026 Stanley Cup playoffs media regulations following Game 6 of their second round series against the Anaheim Ducks on Thursday, May 14th, the Vegas Golden Knights will forfeit a second-round pick in the 2026 NHL Draft. In addition, head coach John Tortorella has been fined $100,000. The imposition of these penalties comes after previous warnings were issued to the club regarding their compliance with the media regulations and other associated policies. Vegas has been offered the opportunity to appeal these penalties to the commissioner's office. That appeal would be held in person next week in New York.
Torts giveth and torts taketh away, it seems, for the Vegas Golden Knights. I want to close out with Locked on Winnipeg Jets because they are also thinking, what would it take to get from 8 all the way up to number 2? It's a longer clip, but it kind of illuminates the similar line of thinking that I have for the Flames trying to go from 6 to 2.
Either the Jets have Hellebuck's decision and they're prepping for the future. If this came from San Jose's camp, that would be even more interesting because it means the Sharks are sniffing around, looking to shop this pick, and they think that there's something the Jets have that fits their needs. I don't think it's Hellebuck. I think in terms of their goaltending and stuff, I don't think they're too worried about that. What they do need is a big defenseman upgrade. And guess what? The Jets have several of them. Would San Jose want to make a pass at a Josh Morrissey plus a pick, maybe? You kind of swap first-round picks. The Jets upgrade to second overall and maybe get like an Eklund or something. The Sharks add, the 8th overall with Morrissey. Is that perhaps a swap that you see materialize? Now, for San Jose, why would they do this, right? The Sharks already have lots of forwards. Smith, Celebrini, Eklund. They've got a whole great core. Their defense is a hot mess. It is a trash fire, right? You've got Orlov, who has really not been doing super well. Ferraro may or may not be sticking around. So in terms of a major upgrade, Morrissey could potentially give you a really good piece to use for the next couple of seasons on a great value contract. You're probably going to get a Norris caliber leader on the blue line. And, with the 8th overall pick still coming in the package, you are likely to find one of Schmitz, Verhoff, Reed, or even a Lynn or something somewhere in that tier, right?
I talked about it earlier this week. Maybe the whole NCAA thing and the wave of players going to play at the collegiate level is it's not an understood market at this point. So maybe unlike prior years, you're going to get some shifting of players that you had locked in a little bit more prior. And then maybe there's also a possibility that San Jose has some nimbleness because they were unexpectedly moved up to number 2 in a time when they maybe don't absolutely need to have number 2, that they're also building for a sustainable future around Macklin Celebrini. And it seems like that door was cracked just enough that there's enough interest from other teams to examine the possibility of that. And to be fair, I don't necessarily know I'm hearing that as much from the Calgary Flames standpoint, but if you think you have seen more scenarios from some of your favorite voices around the Calgary Flames, feel free to share anyone that's talking about Stenberg at number 2, but Calgary could possibly trade up and get them, let alone any of the other teams from 3 to 8, maybe even 9. That is our episode of Locked on Flames for this Saturday, our makeup episode for Thursday. We continue to post Monday through Friday and try to make it so that you can have us be your first listen every single day. Big thanks to you for tuning in all week. You can continue, please, to subscribe and follow our show on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. And then if you never miss an episode, we made the Everydayer Club just for you. Start talking to other Locked On podcast hosts, as well as get in there with other fans of the NHL and beyond. You're talking NFL, NBA, MLB, college softball is big this time of year because you're starting to get into the tournaments. And of course, the WNBA kicked off or started off jump ball. I don't know the analogy there. Tipped off. There you go. A little bit ago. So talk about it all. LockedOnFlames.supercast.com to get members only access to our Discord server where you can do that, as well as get our show ad free on your favorite podcast app. For those of you on video, we send you next to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And for those on audio, please make your second listen NHL Game Night with Locked On NHL. My name is Ryan G. Thanks for having fun with us. We'll talk to you again soon for more Locked On Flames.